difficult to do that. Carmen, yes. I've stolen your LinkedIn just to say a couple of sentences to you.
You're so nice.
So I hope it's okay. I wrote it in as well. It's okay. This is what you have on your
It is that, yeah.
Just to say a few words. I don't know if you saw, but questions called
I'm prepared for that. I know that I'm following John, but I prepared myself.
Hello, everyone. Let's go back to our seats, please. So, first of all, I would like to invite you to take notice of the QR code on the screen there for your feedback on this conference, okay? So, in the end, please evaluate the quality of this great, amazing event, please. So, and we are heading for our final panel, and the topic is collaboration and future directions. And on the floor, we already have, as the moderator, Steve Allen from Validity Foundation, Jérôme Moreau from Andavi, Joaquim Pequicho from France and Portugal is my boss. Be kind with him, please. Professor Angarad Beckett. And finally, we have Carmen from APAV. Also, be kind with her, because she's also the host of this great event. So, congratulations. And now...
Should people be kind to me as well?
Yeah, be kind to everyone, because you are amazing, all of you.
Thank you.
So I think we are in the more relaxing way, so forgive me for this, but we are all friends now, so we are allowed to have this moment. So the floor is yours, and good work there.
Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Briefly, I'm Stephen Allen. I'm the Executive Director of Validity. And I'm very lucky today. Often they put me at the top of the program and say a few words. And I thought how nice it is for once to be able to come along, sit and listen to, I think, some of the exceptional work. And with the panelists, we're going to speak about future directions. But the absolutely exceptional work that has happened on the LINK project. I often say with my team members that if we can shine a light on the specific violations that children with disabilities face, and if our justice systems can be a little bit more sensitive to their needs, then actually we'll be substantially improving access to justice, not just for those children, but actually for much wider components of our society. And so in this final panel, we don't just want to reflect on what we've been hearing today, but we also want to be looking a bit to the future. This project, I think, has shown us that enhancing the position of children with disabilities in the justice system is messy. It can be complicated. It requires commitment, multi- or interdisciplinarity, and it really requires sensitive professionals, whether they be judges, lawyers, prosecutors, or allied professionals. But this project shows it's possible. We can use new technologies to promote communication where communication didn't previously happen. We can use new approaches to case management to really put a focus on the child as the center, the focus of all of our interventions, and try to improve their outcomes. without re-traumatizing them and without re-victimizing them after they may have already experienced some very difficult situations. And what we know, of course, is that children with disabilities don't just face higher incidences of abuse in which they are victimized, but also specific types of abuse on the basis of both their age and often on the basis of their disability status. And so I think the sensitivities that this project brings us are really profound for improving access to justice. And I really want to thank the coalition that have been, or the consortium that have been behind this quite impressive multidisciplinary project. And I can see some pathways for the future. And also because she's not here in person with us, but our project officer, Ayşegül Öz, has been behind the scenes listening, cheering us all on. She's very sad she's not with us here physically today. But I know that ideas are already fizzing, not just in her mind back in Budapest, but across the consortium about how we can go forward. Now look, just 2 weeks ago, and I will stop in a second to bring in our panelists, but 2 weeks ago, Validity and many of us attended something called the Global Disability Summit in Berlin. And here we had people with disabilities worldwide coming together to look at how they can work together, improve disability rights. But the honest truth is that I think many felt that we are entering a period of real challenge for disabled people worldwide, for our representative organizations. And this is going to have an even bigger impact on particularly children with disabilities and those with intellectual or psychosocial disabilities or autistic children who are often left behind. So as we open up to some of the panelists first, I want us to be thinking about how can we not just protect the gains from this project and what we've learnt together, but how can we actually defend children with disabilities in this time, this era of real challenge, of this time of polycrisis, as it's been called, and perhaps a time where we're going to see reduced investment into exactly the types of public services that we've all been advocating here for to work together. So I'm absolutely delighted. I'll just give a very quick intro to each of our panelists before kicking us off. We've got Carmen here from APAV, and I've just stolen a few lines from her bio online. She's the executive director of APAV since 2013, I believe, right? Wow. Responsible for strategic planning, establishing protocols with relevant stakeholders, and managing tasks, including human resources. So we do really need to be nice to you. But you've been with APAV since 2000, so you've seen a lot of change, and it would be very interesting to hear from you that, both as a volunteer victim support worker and then as an advisor, right through to international liaison. So I think very well positioned in this discussion. We have to the end here, Jérôme. Jérôme is, for those of you that don't yet know him, the vice president and spokesperson of the French Federation, France Victimes. That was a good pronunciation. Très bien. And then vice president of Victim Support Europe. His role is to be the voice of victims and the voice of associations, and also to get financial subsidies for the work that we are talking about, working interministerially, that's another long word, in France. Today he tries to implement a new ambition in France for the children who are victims of crime, sexual abuse and domestic violence. And he also works in institutions that serve persons with disabilities and elderly persons. So welcome, Jérôme. Joachim, my pronunciation is getting a challenge today, isn't it? Holds a degree in sociology, specializing in social exclusion, and a master's degree in management, with postgraduate degrees in social economy, law, and social and investment. And in the field of social economy, he's the chairman of a non-profit organization called Cercina. Cercina, that was not... Cercina. As well as vice... This as well, right. Hey, so a great perspective too. And also, of course, the Vice President at Fenezzetti. So welcome. And online, I don't know if we can see her briefly, but Angharad Beckett is dialing in from the UK, I think, in the north, in Leeds. Hi, Angharad, we can see you on the screen now. So lovely to see you. Oh.
Hello.
There we go. And I'll give you a few words. Professor of Political Sociology and Social Inclusion at the University of Leeds in the UK. Her research focuses on disability politics, human rights, and social justice, with a particular focus in disabled children's childhood studies. She is both a Fellow of the Academy of Social Sciences and of the Royal Society of Arts. That is important, and is a founder and editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Disability and Social Justice. And if you're not subscribed, you should to that. So, without further ado, let's jump into the first round, and we'll hear from each of the panelists. And so I think what this project has shown us is that through multidisciplinarity, we can develop new ways, protocols that can support children who are victims of crime. Childhood and disability studies, as well as our legal standards in Europe, actually, have substantially evolved over the last 30 years. However, many of our justice systems continue to think of children with disabilities as simply vulnerable, and they continue to deny access to justice. Even our EU strategies are focused on vulnerabilities and protection. So what do you think is really needed to enhance the status of children with disabilities in our justice systems as rights holders? What recommendations do you have for law, policy, and practice? Angharad, you're on the screen, and I'd like to give the floor to you first, if you like, for an opening pitch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen, and to the organisers for inviting me to be part of this important meeting that you're having, and to our Queen, Jerome, Carmen. I'm really looking forward to our discussion. So to take your first question, Stephen, it makes me think actually of an article that was written many years ago about the concept of vulnerability. And I hope that this pun works in different translations, but the title is Vulnerability, Handle with Care. And they mean handle the concept of vulnerability carefully because of its political, policy, legal implications. So I think that your framing of this problem as being one of simultaneously a recognition of the genuine vulnerabilities of children, but also the way in which vulnerability as a concept comes to frame them in ways that can be very disempowering. So where I would begin, I suppose, is by saying that, you know, right back until from the 1990s onwards in my field, which is sociology, the new sociology of childhood emerged during that time, and it has come to influence the work that we do in disability studies as well, in the field called Disabled Children's Childhood Studies. And what was really important here was that this era of work in childhood studies was all about challenging the ideas that children could not and did not have agency, didn't have capacity, but rather recognizing that all children have agency. They may articulate that in very different ways, and we may need to support and enable them to demonstrate those capabilities, but nevertheless, they all have them. And so I think that's a very important starting point. Of course, recognizing that the concept of agency is enshrined within the UNCRC and CRPD as well. But I just thought it would be helpful for us to explore a little bit about what we mean by competence. I know that in legal discourse, this has a particular meaning, and also it's much debated. But for me, if we step away from those legal terms for a moment, what I want to suggest is that competency is not just relational between humans, something that we enable for each other, but also about an assemblage of all manner of different factors that enable any of us as humans to be able to act and have agency. I'm here today because I received an invitation. That was an act of humans, of decisions, of invites. I'm also here via technological wonders of the internet and videos and so on and so forth. I'm also here because it's very helpful that it's time convenient, because Portugal and UK are in the same time zone, right? So all I'm saying here is that a number of factors came together to enable me to take part in this event and to share my thoughts with you. And that's a really good way to think about how we can ensure that children are also able to be with us, that we are able to enable their voice and listen to them really carefully. So I think I will stop at that point, and perhaps others would like to come in, and we'll see where this conversation takes us.
Thank you very much, Angharadam, for reminding us that actually at the core of effective participation is this idea of having our needs met in different ways, using different means and modes and methods, and that this is a very much an enabling rather than a disabling approach to how we need to view children and children with disabilities. So thank you for that. We're going to move secondly to Jérôme, because Jérôme, I know that you have been thinking about how to enable children who are victims of crime to have better pathways. And perhaps it would be interesting to hear from you about what you see as the future around this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the invitation. And I want to expose today what is the French pathway for the children, and what is today is the collaboration, and for the future, what is the new ambition in France for the victim with disabilities. In fact, I want to tell a story. In the 90s and the 90s, France had to deal with the criminal cases in which young girls with disabilities were raped and killed. And no institution, no people was able to identify the crime committed, and there was not enough time to investigate the fact. It is what the judges, what the police, what the state said to their families. The murderer was finally arrested after 15 murders, and today we don't know for 3 corpses who there are. And after these cases in France, there is a change. And we think we can't forget the child with disabilities, the children with disabilities. And we found a new pathway in France. And the first is not the justice. It is how to report the crime. And in 1998, France has been created the reception units for children in danger for all offenses committed against children. And these units was only mandatory into a general French directive of the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry in 2022. And in this unit, now in France, 100 units in France, there are the prosecutor, police or gendarmerie brigades, forensic doctors, nurses, support associations, facility dogs, and people who can represent the children. And in fact, we have only one report in this, because every actors of the judicial proceeding are in the hospital, and we can film, we can, using appropriate facilities, we can collect evidence, clouds, and report the crime to the prosecutor. And now it is the collaboration between every actors. And in fact, for the children with disabilities, it is more easier than before because, in fact, one report and why France choose hospital, because it can be in court, in the police station, and we choose to have this unit in the hospital because we can have a safety. It's my facility dogs. Because, in fact, we can have a safe place and we can hospitalize immediately children with disabilities or children who are victims of a crime. And after, today, we have two commissions in France in order to protect victims. The first is the Independent Commission on Incest and Sexual Violence Against Children. And it is alongside the government, the health ministry, because, in fact, we discover that in France, 160,000 children are victims of sexual abuse in France every year, whether they have disability or not. And there is a second commission, the Independent Commission on Sexual Abuse in the church. And we estimate that 1 million of minors during 16 years are victims of sexual abuse in church. So today we have a new pathway and everything begins in the hospital. And after we have a pathway in the court, we have a second pathway. It is after the trial for all the victims, but we have a focus on children with disabilities to achieve resilience. I don't hear the resilience today, but it's very important in France, and it is a new challenge, in fact. And the second challenge, in fact, for France, but it's very complicated, is to assess and to give provision for children with disabilities. And today, it's our challenge, and how to get for them the best provision. And our challenge is every victim of sexual abuse, every victim of domestic violence, every victim of physically violence must have compensation and provision. And today, we try to implement this idea, but it's very difficult because we need subsidies.
Jérôme, thank you very much. And I think it's fascinating to hear also the historical context about those moments when things change and when they can change dramatically, often because of long-term historical issues that simply were ignored, or people who had no status, essentially, to achieve justice. So I think this is a really very, very important example of the perhaps paradigm shift that we've heard about and that we're pushing for in the future. So thank you very much, Jérôme. Carmen, I'd like to move on to you, if I may, and perhaps hear your reflections around both what's changed, but is the paradigm shift also coming here? Thank you.
Let's see if I'm feeling optimistic or pessimistic after today, but because we have a mix, isn't it? When we are talking about desk research and what is in the field, we get a lot of frustration, isn't it? Because sometimes we are hearing time and time again the same things, like victims were not able to participate, they were not heard, they don't have a voice, they still don't have a voice, they still don't understand, still the language is hard, or even in a paper, or I don't know, assuming that the victim is informed about their rights because a piece of paper is given to them when they present a complaint. So sometimes it gets a bit frustrated. So, but I think I'm an optimistic, but my colleagues can say more about that. But because we have still a lot of good examples or best examples, I don't know, or good practices, whatever the name that you want to give it. Promising practices. And, you know, today was an example of that. Since the morning up to now, isn't it? We got a lot of promising, we got a lot of inspiration. We have inspiring people. The problem, I still think, is that we have inspiring people that we need, but we don't have an inspiring system or an inspiring structured system that is like that in every, I don't know, in every situation or in every area. And of course, I know I'm asking for too much, but sometimes it gets a bit frustrating to listen to the same things time and time again. So what I can bring in terms of, I don't know, a bit of silver lining, that basically I'm needing a bit of that, so sorry if I'm going into that, but I'm needing. And I can see good practices, not with people with disability. I cannot say that much of good practices. Why? Once they have to reach into the system. We are here today talking about people that are already in the system or got into it in some way. There are loads of people outside, so you know about that. 15% is estimated to be a victim of a crime. Just for an example, in our national statistic, crimes registered, we are only getting, and I'm talking about police, okay? Crimes registered by the police are only going up to 5%, and above it's only reaching 1% of this 15, if we are roughly estimating, okay? So we are a long way in talking about people inside of the system. So some things that I also wanted to bring is, and it's a lot about what David said, for example, about assumed competence, or also Angard said about competence. We assume things. We assume that someone is vulnerable because they are children, and because they are children and they are vulnerable, then they cannot speak or they cannot defend themselves. This is a lie, because they can really defend themselves. They can say something, or at least they must have the opportunity to say something. But their time, and Leonore touched upon that, their time, it's not the time of justice. We understand that justice needs to move fast. Sometimes it's not fast enough for someone that saw their life completely disrupted and they just go to court after I don't know how many, 2 weeks is already too much to come back to. But we are also assuming that, a lot of professionals are assuming that we are going to deal with the ideal victim. So someone that cries a bit because they need to show some, that they were impacted, but they cannot cry a lot. Or if they don't cry, then it's because it doesn't have any impact. Or, I don't know, they have to be ideal because they have to have great memory after a traumatized event, which is incredible. And so we assumed a lot. We also assume that, every court professional has to be impeccable and great after, being badly paid or being in conditions that they work that are lousy. We also assume that the police has to be great when, for them to introduce the case in their own system, they take ages. So I don't know if you ever, I once lost my ID card. I went to report it to the police. I spent there a whole morning. And I was like, oh my God, and I'm complaining about, sometimes it's this type of resources that seems basic, but they are not. And of course, we need to work together because that's the only way to survive. And I think this is the one aspect here is if we don't work together, then it's not possible to do at least one good thing in your day for a victim of a crime, especially children, especially someone with disability, when it's a child with disabilities. Let me see if I said everything that I wanted. Not, but probably I will leave it to later questions. Is that okay?
It's absolutely, it's a great start already. I mean, an important start as well. And just when you were talking about, the classic victim and the idea of what that looks like, and, a victim that doesn't cry isn't really a victim or hasn't been victimized, or a child who can't remember the sequence of events is not a good witness. I mean, these are very, very common challenges. And so I understand that we need greater sensitivity to this and opening up the pathways. And we've heard about how history can drive some important changes in collaboration. We've heard about the need to go from a protectionist vulnerabilities approach to one that enables and centers the voice of the child. Joachim, could I bring you in to see kind of what do you see as the pathways to enhance access to justice? Okay. Thank you.
Again, I will address to you in Portuguese. Eu fiz aqui muitos desenhos com vários tópicos, porque ao longo da manhã e da tarde, do início desta tarde, fui ouvindo algumas afirmações que me foram ajudando também a reformular algumas ideias ou dar evidência àquelas que me parecem mais. E penso que no painel anterior ficou evidente algo que todos sabemos, a complexidade deste debate, com as diferentes perspectivas. O Dr. Celso falava, e bem, Dr. Juiz Celso falava, e bem, de que o sistema tem que assegurar um conjunto de garantias falta uma palavra, ao agressor. Garantias essas que baseavam-se na presunção de inocência que tem que ser garantida pelos tribunais. E depois houve uma reação dos colegas dizendo, está bem, mas temos que dar garantia, temos que trazer as garantias também para a vítima. E é esses equilíbrios que torna todo este assunto muito complexo. Estamos perante a justiça, que assenta numa cultura institucional, numa formalidade, numa grande complexidade, e como é que nós conseguimos mobilizar as garantias e transformar o sistema para que as vítimas possam ter essas mesmas garantias e os seus direitos assegurados. Essa era a minha primeira observação. A segunda é que nós, até por experiência de outros projetos, nomeadamente o Enable, o Disconnect e outros projetos que temos, sabemos que temos que trazer o conhecimento e os saberes para a discussão. Esses conhecimentos e saberes ganham uma força maior, não só pelo conhecimento académico, pelo conhecimento, mas fundamentalmente pelo conhecimento baseado na experiência. E quando, sendo esta uma ideia um bocado filosófica, mas o conhecimento pela experiência leva-nos ao encontro das crianças e dos jovens com deficiência, que têm uma experiência que tem que ser cooptada para o debate, para a discussão e para a participação. O que significa que todo o espaço de experimentação que temos vindo a fazer nos diferentes projetos é um espaço de participação que nos dá ou reforça a ideia da participação como um poder de transformação, que é a razão pela qual nós temos criado os focus groups, temos o Conselho Consultivo e temos trazido nos diferentes projetos a capacidade da voz das crianças e dos jovens e também dos adultos no processo de participação e transformação que queremos. Por isso, logo numa primeira resposta ao Steven, é o poder da voz e o poder da voz das crianças e dos jovens que tem que ser cooptado para o projeto. E, naturalmente, chegamos à justiça, a uma justiça que queremos todos que seja mais acessível, uma justiça que, obviamente, tem que ser acessível e que tem que, obviamente, fazer todo o seu espaço e todo o seu caminho de adaptação às exigências, quer do ponto de vista da comunicação, tendo uma comunicação cada vez mais acessível, foi aqui hoje afirmada a importância da acessibilidade na comunicação, na acessibilidade física, naturalmente, e obviamente as ferramentas tecnológicas também poderão ajudar depois nessa transposição ou nessa transformação. Nos procedimentos, assistimos a modelos profundamente complexos, burocráticos, faz com que, e a Carmen disse, o tempo da justiça não é o tempo das pessoas, porque há toda uma complexidade, e depois também ao nível atitudinal, que tem a ver com as atitudes, com o comportamento, com as culturas, e que tem que ser, obviamente, também ele transformado. Chegamos à outra dimensão, para responder, e continuo a tentar responder ao Steve, à dimensão da formação, da capacitação, que abordámos em todos os painéis, a importância de darmos formação. Uma formação, e penso que foi a Lúcia que disse esta frase aqui, que é uma formação que transforme, uma formação que não dê informação, mas que seja uma formação que transforme, o que significa que neste processo de formação voltamos à tal reflexão inicial por onde eu comecei, da questão do conhecimento baseado na experiência, que é a co-construção dos referenciais de formação, da formação, numa lógica multidisciplinar e numa lógica inclusiva, onde as pessoas com deficiência devem e têm que participar para conseguirmos fazer todo este processo de transformação. Acima de tudo, terminava dizendo que há que assegurar garantias às vítimas, às pessoas com deficiência, às crianças, aos jovens, garantias essas que passam por não voltar a a chamada segunda vitimização, não ter uma justiça que assenta em bases assistencialista e, acima de tudo, que respeite os tempos necessários, os recursos necessários e, acima de tudo, e finalizando, a voz, porque fiz a afirmação, o poder da voz, e queria terminar dessa forma. Obrigado.
Thank you so much, Joaquim. And I think this idea of centering voice and promoting agency, it does seem to have this transformational potential. We heard, I think, from Venera that with children being consulted, then gradually wanting to take a leadership role, even in the training of professionals, which we hope could have this sort of transformational agenda. And it seems that with the LINK project, we've been trying to extend voice to children that are rarely heard. And when I say voice, of course, I think we need better language, because not all children communicate using traditional modes of communication. Not all victims communicate using traditional methods of articulation. And I think one of the aspects that's been very interesting in this project is how can we promote communication that doesn't just allow self-expression of children with disabilities, but really enables justice systems, judges, lawyers, and prosecutors to understand themselves what the position of the child really is. And I think we've heard some really exciting uses of modern technologies, of the development of generative AI to promote quite customized forms of symbols and designs to promote communication. So there's a lot of possibility. We're in this sort of technological period of great possibility. So the technology gives us some opportunities, I think, to do things easier. But perhaps it also has some risks. It's not necessarily a panacea, I think, as some people were saying earlier. So my question for the panelists in this second round really is about what risks and opportunities you see in this new era of technology, of the facilitation of the voice of the child using modern technologies. And we've got a slightly different order this time. Jérôme, I'd like to come to you. I know he's also very nervous about catching his plane straight after this panel. So Jérôme, we'll let you go first. Go on.
Thank you. It's very difficult to answer to this question because, in fact, I think the world has changed, and the new technology impact a lot, and is a source of an optimistic way. And for the victims, we think it is a panacea. We can arrive that victims could express their trauma, could say what's happened. We have clues in the social network, and it's permanent. I think it's more complicated because, in fact, the innovation is important, and I think it will be helped in the future, justice. But I'm not agree that helping children with disability is a question of judge, police, and lawyers. I think there is a lot of factors around these children, and the institution, the support association, doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers. And I think it is the base. It is the first level to help and to support all the victims, and in particular, victims with disability. And after, the new technology arrives. But only after. I trust in the human accompaniment. So, now, to answer, because it's a crucial, in fact, question, and I heard all the day today that it's a question for all the victims can follow a trial, can access to the justice. And in fact, the challenge is that all the victims, all the disabled, and in fact, I think we can say, I work for institution for disabled and only adults. It is the same challenge. How they can have the respect of their right. How they can have a way to promote their fundamental rights. And in France, we choose an approach not by the accompaniment, not by the support, only by the fundamental rights. And how they can have in the society, in the justice, access to their right. And it's very important because we consider today all the people, all the disabled, as the citizens of the same state. Alors, I believe that the new technology are important because I think they could remedy to the difficulties mentioned today, and I am optimistic because victims have an opportunity to be recognized. But I think it's not the only way, and I think at the end, it is the justice who will recognize the status of victims. And it's very important to have a decision. Alors, for the restorative justice in France, we implement this mechanism in the law in 2015. 10 years of experience, and we can say it's very difficult for minors, and in particular for minors with disabilities. We have 2 experiences in France. It's not a lot. Huh? And it doesn't work. In fact, we have to stop this way because, in fact, it is very difficult for the children to have the offender face to face. So we try to imagine a new pathway for the restorative justice. And I want to finish around the facility dog because I believe in this project. I know Carmen is not agreeing. but
Sorry.
Alec,
No. I have to clarify. I have nothing against facility dogs. I just think that we could use shelter dogs. That is my only point.
In fact, we have two trials. I don't know if you know, but we have a very big trials in France with the doctors who have raped 300 children in 10 years. And we have 10 facility dogs for the children today, mobilized. and all the children wants a facilitated dog during the audition by the judges. So it's very important, and I have the slide, but and we have another. The first experiences with a very big, important trial is for the bus, for a crash between a bus and a train, and we have all the children who are injured and who have disability today, and we use the facility dogs for them, and it's very, very impressive, and it's very important to have these devices, but in complement with social worker, psychologist, and lawyer in the support service.
Thank you very much, Joachim. So technology is definitely not a panacea. I'm reminded, of course, of the intervention of Camille Latimier from Prague earlier today, who also spoke about this need, I think, for both human and technological aspects to come together. I'm also reminded around the interventions around the Barnehus and how different professionals may be seeking different goals. And essentially, we've got to be careful when we think about any one of these new mechanisms, whether it be restorative justice, procedural accommodations in the justice system, human support, etc. We've got to be careful in thinking that any single one is a golden or silver bullet. It does point, however, I think, to the need for justice systems, broadly speaking, to have an element of flexibility, which of course we know challenges legal and judicial assumptions about due process. So we need to push back on that and stick with the more progressive judges here in Portugal, clearly, who are pushing those boundaries. But that element of flexibility seems at its absolute core, from what I'm hearing. And Joachim, if we can come to you, how does this resonate with you? I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Over.
I think we need to clarify that technology, it is a tool. It's not the core of the human rights. But again, in Portuguese, it's easy for me. Ok. Acima de tudo, o que eu queria sublinhar é que, mais do que a tecnologia, tem a ver com as pessoas, com as culturas, as práticas, e a tecnologia resume-se a uma ferramenta, a um facilitador que é usado para o cumprimento das garantias e dos direitos das pessoas. É, acima de tudo, no nosso entendimento, um suporte para todos os agentes, sejam para os agentes de justiça, sejam para as pessoas, arguidos, vítimas. O que significa que coloca um grande desafio a todos nós, que é a capacitação dos agentes, todos eles, deste ecossistema, para a utilização de forma adequada destas ferramentas tecnológicas, e, naturalmente, não podemos ficar só nessa capacitação, porque podemos ter limites ou ficar limitados naquilo que deve ser também a mobilização de outros serviços complementares de suporte à utilização das tecnologias. Parece-me que vivemos hoje num mundo em que todos falamos de avaliação, mas, acima de tudo, temos vindo a introduzir, de uma forma muito sistémica e orgânica, a questão dos impactos. E é importante que a introdução das tecnologias no mundo judicial seja acompanhado também com uma avaliação dos impactos em todo este ecossistema. Se não o fizermos, estamos a partir de um pressuposto de que a tecnologia vai resolver todos os problemas que tínhamos a montante. E a tecnologia pode não resolver todos os problemas. Por isso, temos que fazer um caminho de introduzir, fazer as alterações legislativas, dar mais ferramentas e suporte aos tribunais, mas, acima de tudo, ir acompanhando sempre com uma avaliação de impacto relativamente àquilo que pode estar a acontecer no ecossistema, porque a tecnologia tem tudo o que nós entendemos de bom e tem, simultaneamente, tudo o que entendemos de mau, e, se queremos uma justiça de futuro, esta avaliação, esta medição dos impactos tem que estar em permanência. Obrigado.
Thank you very much. A tool, an enabler, but not sufficient in its own. And indeed, we do need to be cautious and careful, it seems to me, especially when we talk in the realm of information sharing, data collection. This was another component, which absolutely essential in underpinning interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, but also I think a question emerges in my mind, yes, how do we assess the impacts on the child, on the and its broader ecosystem? And also, what is the role for consent of the child within this? There seems to me the real risk of a child being placed in the box of victim and therefore having all of their information being able to be shared without them necessarily being the driver of that. So I think that's a really important question when we're bringing in new methods of work, new technologies as well. Carmen, does this resonate with you, or what do you see with these new tools and techniques?
Well, I'm a fan. Everyone can say at the office that I'm a very big fan of technology. But why? Because it makes my life easier. And one of the things that we saw, and I will go a bit to the past, just to bring you an example, a very clear example. In 2008, the financial crisis, everyone reminds about it for sure. We were just talking about Troika and the cuts that we still feel in our government. But in that time, for example, our helpline, we didn't have exactly a helpline. We had a number that people could call, like a central number, but it was a paid call. So in 2008, what we saw is that people were reaching out, but before we get the call, they would disconnect because they didn't have the money for that call. And this was, we were already doing a lot of work and trying to have a free number. It had a lot of costs by that time. But this was the push, and you were talking about earlier, what are the push factors sometimes, to change? This was really one, where we started a whole project. It was financed by a foundation, an electricity-related foundation. It took us 3 of those projects to get this helpline fully running. Not only at the level of the software, we developed a whole new case management system, so it changed even the way that we were addressing face-to-face meetings with victims. So it was not just in the helpline, it was also in terms of face-to-face. It was a huge change in APAV and the way that we were reaching out victims. We were excited, amazingly excited, because we had a free number, 116006. You can still call it. I hope you don't, because it means you're a victim of a crime. But if you do, you call this number. And at a certain point, we were, okay, we can reach people that don't have service. We will get them, I don't know. I remember that there was this particular case, I don't know, in the middle of nowhere in Portugal, and we are a small country, where we arranged a meeting with a victim in the health center because it was the only place public that we were able to get, and no one would know. And the case came through the helpline. So we got a lot of good examples. But at some point we were, but let's do an impact evaluation of the system. And still, a lot of the majority, the major percentage of our first contact, the first contact of people with APAV, it's through phone. It still is through phone. So social media, it's not there on the top of the list. And what we saw is that, yes, it's a great entry point, but the success of the intervention is risen, if you get a face-to-face meeting. So it makes the whole of a difference. And this is it, despite the fact that we love technology. I love David's presentation. Come on, when you see that coming, and it's just, we are so happy about it. But a bit like Joaquin was saying, it's a tool. It doesn't substitute people, and so, and well, we all agree on this. We need the contact, and we need the other person to be with us. And a bit like you were saying when you were listening to children or to the youngsters, and I think what resonates with me is that when we listen to what they have to say, we also have a feeling that, okay, we are doing it right. And it feels good, isn't it? When what you are doing or what you are thinking or envisioning it's something that is doing something right for other people. So I think that's we are all agreeing on that, isn't it? That yes, technology, yes, I don't know, AI, wherever we are talking about, but at the same time, let's not forget about the connection that we need with people, real ones.
I think it's a wonderful connection back. It's what goals do the systems that we're creating really serve? And there was a great debate about whether actually criminal justice or penal justice systems can ever serve in full or in meaningfully children or other victims actually that come into contact with it. And I see Angharad listening very carefully here, and I'd like to bring you in, Angharad. I mean, are we really listening to children with these new developments, or what is needed really to really promote something a little bit more grounded in the autonomy, the dignity of children, beyond just using those tools? Is it enough? Are we doing enough?
Yes, I mean, I can you hear me? Sorry.
Yep, we can.
Yeah, okay. I think everything that people have been saying is very, very powerful. Obviously, technology is an important tool amongst many other factors and is certainly not the panacea, as you've said. I won't repeat what everybody has been saying because I agree, but what you're asking me also is about whether we're really listening. And that's important because however much we might focus quite rightly on finding ways to enable voice for children, what does that really mean if we're not listening, if we're not listening properly? And what I mean by that is I think there is a kind of nexus, a coming together of ableism, a kind of expectations of certain kinds of abilities and capabilities of the witness, if you like, with adultism, the way that we expect perhaps in legal environments or in the police station or whatever for children somehow to be able to articulate their experiences in ways that really are not how children do articulate their experiences. Now, this requires a lot of skill on behalf, as one of my colleagues said, not just lawyers and judges and those involved in that formal aspect, but also the social workers, the teachers, the members of communities, trusted members of communities, you know, who children might talk to, who should be able to hear and listen. And I think that one example as well that I just wanted to touch on to make this more concrete is in relation to the debates about group homes, which I know at least Stephen and I have been, you know, quite involved in, Stephen more than me, but we've been involved in that. And one of the interesting things that happens there is that when children express that this experience of living in a group home is distressing, or that they're experiencing abuse, or that it's not like a home, or that it's emotionally traumatizing, oftentimes this is denied, even if they are articulating it. And we are told that these are home-like, that they're family-like, and so on. But when you ask children what it means to be at home, what it means to be part of a family, and understand it from their perspective, we start to realize that these are actually abusive systems that they are trapped within. Now, I know that's a little removed from the kinds of cases that perhaps you're talking about in this kind of criminal justice setting. However, I think it's really important that we recognize that we're not always listening to children and understanding how they articulate their experiences, their understanding of important aspects of their lives. We're instead devaluing their perspectives, even if we have made efforts to actually hear. It's how we process what we hear that really matters.
Thank you so much, Angharad. I think that's absolutely brilliant because I think it really gets to some of the core about how the inner life of a child, we can come up with tools to hear them, but not necessarily to understand them and to respect them in the position in which they are situated. And actually, it's not so far removed from the law, Angharad. The law often has to look into the intent of crimes committed against a victim and often has to look at the subjective experience and impact, and particularly when taking into account the level of severity of crime, when taking into account the accountability of the offender, where there is a finding of guilt. So I think that this is actually a very, very important way of bringing us back again and saying it's not just the child, I mean, who we need to be focusing on. It's the justice system itself, its social role. It has a critical social role in recognizing the full diversity of the experience of children and children who may have alternative ways of communicating or expression, which are generally not what justice systems like to deal with. That's why there are so many professionals around in the system, because justice systems per se are not very good at this. So we need to go much further. I'd like us to open up just for a minute or two, a couple of minutes, to see if there are any interventions from the floor, because I know that we're going to run out of time, and then I'm going to come back to our panelists for a combined third round and some closing remarks. Okay, so just to give you a bit of notice. But are there any remarks or questions from the floor that people would like to come in on? I know that Axel is ready with the mic. And I see, I think, David. And also online, if there are people speaking online, they can come. Go ahead.
I'm going to try and word this carefully. We're seeing a pushback globally on diversity, equality, equity, and inclusion initiatives. It raises the question in my mind as to how important is intersectionality to us as a disability movement in the future. We have, over the last few years, ridden the shoulders of other diversity initiatives. And in most cases, disability is the least well responded to of those initiatives. That led me into the discussion that I've been listening to, is do we need to take care not to try to fix the world and lose track of what we can do in terms of access to justice?
Thank you very much, David. And do we have any others or online? Is there anyone online? I can't see or I can't identify online, so someone will have to help me. I can see Angharad. Ready to go. Yeah, do you want to go in? Yeah, in response to David? Go for it.
Just to answer David, yes, we do need to not lose track, or else, I don't know, can you live? Can you wake up in the morning and get out of bed when you look at all the things that are happening in the world? You can't. So yes, of course, you need to strategize, you have to prioritize, and that's why I think we are all here today, and that's why APAV probably just now arrived to this project. We have for many years, and Joaquim probably is not really aware because it was mainly with Sara, we tried several project applications to work on victims of crime with disability. And so also for us, we are humbling in this path in terms of how can we improve. We have a website, the InfoVictims website, but it's just, for example, we were only able and funded to do a version of the website for hearing and impaired. So there's just, but at the same time, for example, we had meetings with the association Voz do Autista, right? So autistic voice, literally translating, or voice of the autist. Well, it's it's better translated. And what they say to us, for example, the Info Victims website that we have that explains the whole criminal justice system, and what we tried was to simplify the language with the help of victims, with the help of judges, with the help of police. If an UNCRC reads the website, I'm sure they will say, oh my God, is this simple language? For sure they will say it's not, because it's not that version, you know? So we really have to start somewhere. Even this project, when you look at Diana, and my heart starts pumping, because it's just, you know, it's just a prototype at this phase. And my heart starts pumping. Why? Because you want it in real life. You want it to happen. Because even when you are working directly with victims of crime every day, sometimes you don't want this ideal solution. You want it now. You want it working in the field, so that your life also, but better, the life of victims, it's easier in the whole system, because it's really hard, and it's going to be always hard. Even if you have a perfect system, it's going to be hard, because it's a traumatic experience, and you are living all the consequences of a victimization. But if it's the more acolhedora, what is the English word? Welcoming, or the most supportive path possible, the better. I hope I answered your question. Well.
I think it was a great start, and it's a great, and it's an important provocative question, I think, about our positionality. Like, where do we start? And it is quite clear that we are in a period where there is a lot of skepticism about the language of intersectionality, of inclusion, of diversity, etc. This is absolutely the case. I think it was put to me very well, however, just a couple of weeks ago in this Disability Summit, is that if we do not defend our diversity in our movement, then we're doing everyone a disservice. There is not just a disability agenda, is what it was told to me. If we don't respect the situation of the girl child with autism in particular settings, and we cannot address that, then we are actually failing in our broader agenda. And I think that this is an important challenge. But there is no doubt at the level of rhetoric and political rhetoric, and here in Europe, of course, we are clearly seeing a period where there is a massive pushback on this, I suppose, approach to recognizing diversity and inclusion. There's other challenges as well in a period where we are clearly seeing a reduction in the investments in social protection for persons with disabilities, and this includes in particular children with disabilities. We're seeing external threats to kind of the democratic order in the European Union, and even a shift by the European Union away from tackling some of these internal aspects of our democracy and rule of law towards defending against the outside. And so it seems to me that there is this time of real danger, not just for children with disabilities, but for multiple populations who simply will not feature on the political agenda over the coming years to come. And one central aspect of this project is about promoting what we've been calling multidisciplinarity. I could recharacterize that as perhaps solidarity. And the question is, what can we do to promote solidarity and to prevent rollbacks coming out of this project over the years to come? Because if we don't do it, of course, there is a risk that we will quickly lose the momentum we have developed here. So I'd like to come right along the panel with that whole collection of thoughts, but really over the next few years, what can we do to come together? Could I start with you, Jérôme, with your intervention? Final intervention, please, and we'll come right down the panel. All right? Thank you, Jérôme.
In fact, I agree with you, and I disagree, because I think the world has changed, but the vision of the disabled has changed too, I think. And today, it's not the same way, the same public policies. And in Europe, there is a lack of resources, of financial subsidies for the institution, for the justice, for the association, to help and support victims, to help and support all people who are victims of a crime, and perhaps for disabilities, but not only them. But I think there is a movement in the society. There is some citizens who are mobilized around these questions. There is associations who are very strong, who are very solid, and I think it's a movement which will be growing. I believe that. No, but I believe that in Europe, and I am sure of that. If there is some vote, if we can say democracy, republic, is not today the way for a lot of citizens, I think for the disabled, I think we have won the fight and we have won the challenge. But now, it's not a question of society, of citizens, of movement, of NGO. It is a question of the states and the European Union, what they want to do with these policies. And our challenge of us, association, disabled movement, all the citizens, is to promote this policy, is to promote these values. At the end of the Second War, in France, we implement in the Constitution all the people have to be helped and supported by the state, in particular, children, disabled, and elderly people. It is a way in the Constitution. It is a fundamental right. And today, the government can do anything versus this article of this Constitution. I think in the European Union, we must try to implement some article, or this example, but it's not the French system which is the best, but why not? But voilà. I think there is a very, very important movement against that, because we need subsidies, we have the war, we have climatic event, impact. But today, it is the citizens, it is their life. And we have to promote the ideas that the victimization is very expensive for the states. And we know if we don't care victim in the future, what it's cost in the future. So no, it's another impact. In France, the movement for the disabled is very important and is very strong. And I think it is the same thing in the Europe. Alors, I have only 3 minutes. So to conclude, I would like to deliver a final message. I believe that children with disabilities must be supported, accompanied, and helped, because every child is a citizen, and it is the democratic and the republic way. In this movement, the most important is to understand that European association and movement to support victims have to remain committed to its mission of ensuring that every victim in Europe receives the support, justice, and care they deserve. A comprehensive coordination strategy at both national and Europe levels is today crucial for improving services for those in need and strengthening our European network. By working together in advocating for victims' rights and coordinating the optimal provision of the necessary services, we can bring impactful change to the lives of many victims with disabilities, but it's only a question of courage and honor.
Et merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Very, very strong words there of hope. Actually, even in this time of challenge, we know that solidarity, movement building, engaging each other, this can really center on some core European values. And I heard that very clearly, that if we're not fighting for these values, then what are we in fact fighting for? So thank you very much for those excellent remarks, Jérôme. Joaquim, can you also motivate us? Thank you.
Obrigado. Eu vou fugir aqui ao meu guião, porque foi colocada uma questão relativamente aos desafios globais que se colocam perante agendas que vão nos colocando numa dimensão secundária, mas nós fomos devidamente avisados. Portugal antecipou esse aviso com a crise da dívida soberana. Nós fomos obrigados a olhar para uma perspectiva de futuro num momento complexo, que precisava de soluções complexas, mas fomos capazes de ultrapassar, e hoje Portugal está em contraciclo à realidade europeia em função daquilo que foi o olhar com capacidade crítica para os desafios que se colocavam. Também fomos avisados de que a ideia da policrise ia surgir, as crises iam aparecer um conjunto de crises em tempo, com menos tempo entre elas, mais curtas, com mais impacto, e que obrigava a termos capacidade de resposta para reagir a essas mesmas, e obrigava-nos acima de tudo a olhar para um pensamento de transformação da sociedade, tornando cada vez mais, provocando aqui aquilo que nós chamamos de agilidade, termos mais capacidade de agilização dos processos, mais flexibilidade, mais simplificação, e eu tenho dúvidas se nós fizemos esse percurso, à data de hoje tenho dúvidas se fizemos esse percurso de agilização, de flexibilidade e de simplificação. Não sei se não continuamos em contraciclo, e olhando para a Europa, ela é uma fonte de burocracia e de dificuldades que se vão colocando a todos. Pronto. Esta era uma primeira nota. A segunda nota é que, e respondendo ao não me recordo o nome do professor, ao colega, ao David, a questão é que nós temos tido, na área da deficiência, temos tido um discurso que tem seguido uma lógica de topo para baixo, bottom down, e não uma lógica no sentido que estamos a intervir ao nível da Europa, estamos a intervir ao nível das diretivas, estamos a intervir ao nível eu diria falta-me a palavra, mas de uma atuação profundamente política e impositiva aos territórios, e esquecemos que os agentes de inclusão não estão na Europa, os agentes de inclusão estão naquilo que nós chamamos as estruturas de base comunitária, estão nas comunidades, estão nos agentes que estão no terreno, que estão próximos das pessoas, e temos tido nos últimos anos um discurso na área da deficiência que ela é de oposição não é de caminho conjunto, de identificarmos os desafios que temos pela frente, mas temos tido um discurso contrário àquele que deveríamos ter. Se vocês refletirem sobre toda a discussão sobre a desinstitucionalização no contexto europeu, encontramos aquilo que eu estou a dizer. Um discurso, uma narrativa que coloca as organizações no lado mau, no lado errado do processo, em nome de um princípio que todos nós defendemos, que é a alteração das culturas institucionais, o combate às práticas institucionalistas ou institucionais e, acima de tudo, fazer um processo de transformação a partir da base, a partir das organizações de base comunitária. Eu falo nisto porque as CERCIs, o nosso movimento, são cooperativas de base comunitária, de serviços integrados na comunidade, com a participação das pessoas, em que as próprias pessoas com deficiência são donas da cooperativa e, naturalmente, o grande desafio que se coloca a nós é os processos de transformação, acima de tudo, para darmos garantias e cumprirmos os direitos das pessoas. Mas o discurso que vem de cima do contexto europeu e de algum lobby à volta da Comissão Europeia é um discurso profundamente de agressão e até de provocação àquilo que é a realidade deste... Pronto. E isto para dizer o quê? Para dizer que este confronto, esta dialética, retirou-nos de um espaço de consenso sobre os caminhos a fazer, sobre as exigências que temos que ter. Porque em Portugal eu sou o vice-presidente da FENACERC, mas sou simultaneamente o vice-presidente da Confecup. E o meu papel somos 4 organizações que têm o papel de negociar com o Governo, com o Primeiro-Ministro e com os Ministros, toda a dimensão de cooperação, o que nós chamamos o compromisso de cooperação. Eu sou um desses 4 elementos, o que significa que, para mim, é muito simples explicar a importância daquele momento. É que nós, obviamente, praticamos a solidariedade, somos altruístas, mas, acima de tudo, nós produzimos um bem público. E esse bem público que nós produzimos é o bem público da inclusão. Se considerarmos a inclusão como um bem público, então não há limites para os recursos que temos que mobilizar para cumprirmos a nossa missão, sejam recursos nacionais ou europeus, não há limites para que toda a nossa agenda esteja no core das políticas europeias, porque nós produzimos um bem público.
Thank you so much. Striving for the public good, public assets, actually, often in times of challenge, we have to do better with less, and we have to often do that in ways that build collectivity, recognizing inclusion as opposed to exclusion as well. And I think it was a very, very interesting set of points, and clearly that we can, as a social economy, intervene to ensure that our European institutions
Steve.
see this. Please.
Quando eu falo que produzimos um bem público, quando eu faço a afirmação que produzimos um bem público, que é o bem público da inclusão, eu não defendo que temos que fazer melhor com menos. Eu defendo que devemos fazer melhor com mais recursos. E a Europa e Portugal, o nosso governo português e a Comissão Europeia têm que se confrontar com esta realidade. Para garantirmos qualidade no caminho que estamos a fazer, temos que mobilizar mais recursos. E por isso é que eu defendo a inclusão como um bem público. A inclusão faz, obviamente, com práticas, com cultura, com atitudes, mas também se faz com investimento e com recursos. E esse tem que ser o nosso foco, sem criarmos divisões no setor da ciência. Não sei se fui claro na minha afirmação, mas queria só reforçar este aspecto.
I think very clear. Thank you very, very much. In the last few minutes, and we are, as usual, running out of time, and we've got some real little ones over there who seems to know what they want, which I think is their mum, right? Carmen, can I bring you in for a minute or two before we close?
Thank you so much, Stephen. Well, I think they are one of the reasons that I'm here today. So, and also very important. They inspire also to tell what I'm going to say. One of the things is, how can we promote solidarity when we look at a world like we are seeing, isn't it? It's scary when everything is in our face in terms, I don't know, segregation or exclusion, or we cannot say any words like equality or gender-based violence. Sometimes it's also something that there are words being erased, almost, books being taken out of shelves. So it's almost like one of my favorite books, I have to say, it's George Orwell's dystopia on 1984. So it's almost like, is this coming a reality right now, but in different shapes? But what I can say is that initiatives like the ones that we are promoting here, projects like the ones that you were all involved in, networks such as Victim Support Europe. I'm biased, I know, because I've been connected to Victim Support Europe for many years, and now I'm treasurer of Victim Support Europe. But these are also initiatives and coalitions that bring us all together. And I say this, like Joaquin was saying, from every level. So this means European level, local level, regional level, national level. We all, and I think we already used this word today many times in different ways, which is connection. If we connect with others, then we can always, all the time, show the importance of my own problems, your obstacles, and how the way that we can help each other in finding the best solutions. One of the things that we have to guarantee, and I think this is core in this, is not leaving someone out. Because when you are leaving people out, you are segregating and creating the field for people to also, this is already studied for so many years, in sociology, and we have 3 sociologists here, so I'm also one, but in many fields, when someone is left out, it's also going in a path usually very connected to his extreme positions. So we have to be very attentive to this in our daily work. So yes, I would like to feel more connected. I would like to bring the theme of disability even more and more to APAV. I would like to connect even more with FENA-CRC, with all the CRCs, and to be able to bring clear procedures on how to do, because it's not just a matter of protocols, it's a matter how can we work in the field. If I have a person with a disability in APAV, can I call you out and have a support person in your end to come in and help me communicate? Or even the opposite, if you identify, do you need help identifying someone that is a victim of a crime? We can help on that very easily and exchange this type of training. So we have to give really clear steps on this and not just stay in the surface or in the ideal situations.
Brilliant. Connection, learning from each other and supporting each other. Do you agree, Angharad? What would you say?
Absolutely. Very powerful words from everybody. I'm just going to bring us back to this notion of polycrisis, if I may, just for a moment, because I think that there is a risk in the face of what seems like monumental problems that the world faces, climate change, geopolitical instability, economic downturn, and all of these, and conflict, all of the horrible things that we see in the world, and which do indeed exacerbate existing inequalities and create new ones, and new vulnerabilities in the proper sense of the word. We have to face that and recognize its complexity. But at the same time, I think there's an emerging discourse that these moments, this point of rupture, if you like, offer also possibilities for change if we grasp them and take them, and that they provide an opportunity for collaboration, of coming together of governments, civil society organizations, private sector, individuals, and so on, to think about how we can do and be differently. In fact, actually, I was thinking about that famous quote from Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world, she said. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So I think we do need a coming together in events like this and many, many others, and to use hope really as a driver of change as well, to not feel that the situation is so bad that we can't take steps to intervene. And my final thought would be that as we start, as I hope we will, to come out of these multiple crises that we face, that as we build back, let's say, from the conflict in Ukraine, if there is peace, and I hope that there will be, again, I'm going to make this concrete, that we build back differently and better, that we don't, for example, have institutions for disabled children in Ukraine, which Stephen and his colleagues in DRI and other organisations have been working so hard to expose the horrors, the violence that children in these institutions encounter and experience. So really what I hope is that we grasp that opportunity and say, at these extreme moments, perhaps there is still the glimmer of hope that we might do and be differently if we come together.
Well, thank you so much, Angharad, giving us this great kind of opportunity to grab this moment of rupture. Let's look at the links we can make and build back in a way that can actually be more genuinely grounded in the diversity of the children who we hope to have their status increased, but also so we can support each other. It is this small group of individuals, not just in this room, a slightly bigger group online, who I know everyone at Validity wants to thank you very much for your incredible cooperation and collaboration on this initiative. If anything else, this project itself shows that multidisciplinary collaboration is not only possible, but achievable. He's bringing new partnerships and is actually defending concrete victims, children with disabilities today through your networks and far beyond. And certainly I know from our side we have learned a huge amount from this initiative. So thank you very much to all the panelists. I know Jérôme has gotten out on time for his flight, but we thank him on his way to his plane. Thank you, Joaquim. Thank you very much, Carmen. Thank you, Angharad. And thank you very much to all of you for joining. And I think a small round of applause, please, for our contributors. And I think the last thing for me to do is hand over to Bruno, is it? To give our closing remarks. Thank you.
So we are close to the end, and Bruno Monteiro from the Validity Foundation, he has a pivotal role throughout this link project, and he is going to guide us in reflecting on today's discussion and looking ahead toward our shared commitment to advancing child-friendly justice. Bruno, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna. And especially thank you to absolutely everyone for the wonderful discussions throughout the day. It was really, really inspiring. And especially for me, because then as I kept thinking about the future and the things we're going to do in the project and even more things that we can do together, it makes me feel really, really excited. And so I'm going to keep it brief because I'm sure everyone is had a long day and they're looking forward to either just go back home, relax, or do some sightseeing. So here, I think I'm going to pick up on the words that Sabine mentioned during panel 2, which is, what the heck is a model multidisciplinary cooperation system? So, and this is what this project is all about, right? We don't really know what that is in the justice system, but we have spent a couple of years trying to figure that out on how criminal justice systems and child protection professions can work together in a multidisciplinary way, in a way that they're not used to doing it, but we create guidance just to make that easier and trying to work out either through practical guidance, guidelines that we've been developing the project, or we're looking at technological tools or implements that can actually try to make their life easier. Because as also Shauna mentioned, that multidisciplinary work is really quite hard, and it changes a lot in how people work and are supposed to work. So whatever we can do to make everyone's life easier, that's really what it's all about, what we're doing in this project. And following the program and also the orientations coming up by the coordinator, Aishagul Oz, which unfortunately she's not here with us, but she's listening from home, that it was really important for us to reflect, especially in the first panel, that regardless of any technological tool or anything you can think of, first we have to start with the basics. That if you want children with intellectual psychosocial disabilities to have a more positive experience, then individual needs assessment is necessary. And even that one has to be done in a cooperative manner as well. And we learned a lot through the first panelist that there's very mixed, mostly negative experience of how that has been conducted in the EU. Having said that, having a definition of standards of what the process will look like, which all the partners in the consortium across the 8 different EU countries, that's what we're working on to develop and try to make that clearer, and making sure that as we continue working, and it might take maybe months, maybe years, maybe even longer, it's hard to say, but in the end, by having that strong foundation, then we'll be in a very good position to apply any sort of technological solution just to make the job easier on how to apply that process. And to make that work, we should never forget for whom we're doing this, which is for children and other victims with disabilities and even without disabilities. And while doing so, without forgetting that resources are limited and professionals themselves, they also need the support to make sure all of this happens. Thank you everyone for the inspiration and the wonderful talks. And hope you enjoy Lisbon for everyone coming in person. And Sveti, go ahead.
Thank you. We hear you thanking us, but we need to thank Validity. The coordinator, the big boss, the nice buddy that was helping us through all the project. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Bruno. Thank you for your help. But special thanks to Aisha.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for all the interpreters and also for your service for the wonderful support. I'll call the conference for closing, and thank you so much for your patience, and really, everyone, it was amazing to be here.